Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, Counter-Spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
We thank you for tuning in for this very special edition of the program as we go back to August 14th, 1945, VJ Day, the date which Japan surrendered to the Allies. Now, later in the program, we're going to hear an amazing rendition. Orson Welles reading Norman Corwin's 14 August, as it was broadcast on this date back in 1945. For 3.5 years, the nation had scrimped, saved, done without, backed the war effort by putting every available penny into war bonds. People lived without road trips due to ration gasoline and rubber, changed their diets due to ration meat, sugar, even canned goods and frozen foods. People grew victory gardens to supplement their meager food supplies, and Americans learned how to can what they could that they grew so they could eat. There were scrap drives for metal, rubber, paper. Housewives encouraged to save waste fats to help in the war effort and to help the limited supplies of soap. Even shoes, typewriters, bicycles, kitchen appliances, and automobiles required applications to the government before they could be bought during wartime due to tight supplies. All to support the war effort of the American and Allied efforts in World War II. Now, with troops in Europe, Africa, and the Pacific early in the war, it was truly a global conflict. May 8th, 1945, German forces surrendered, bringing an end to the war in Europe and Africa. President Truman on that date remembered the chief executive who had preceded him and who guided the U.S. through the first 3 years of the war when he announced the end of the European conflict.
This is a solemn but a glorious hour. I only wish that Franklin D. Roosevelt had lived to witness this day. General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe. For this victory, we join in offering our thanks to the Providence which has guided and sustained us through the dark days of adversity. Our rejoicing is sobered and subdued by a supreme consciousness of the terrible price we have paid to rid the world of Hitler and his evil band. Let us not forget, my fellow Americans, the sorrow and the heartache which today abide in the homes of so many of our neighbors whose most priceless possession has been rendered as a sacrifice to redeem our liberty. We can repay the debt which we owe to our God, to our dead, and to our children only by work, by ceaseless devotion to the responsibilities which lie ahead of us. If I could give you a single watchword for the coming months, that word is work, work, and more work. We must work to finish the war. Our victory is but half won. The West is free, but the East is still in bondage to the treacherous tyranny of the Japanese. When the last Japanese division has surrendered unconditionally, then only will our fighting job be done.
After a brief celebration, the focus turned to the fighting in the Pacific. As the battle continued, Americans thought the war might continue for another year. That speculation ended when on August 6, 1945, a shocking announcement from President Truman about what was truly a weapon of mass destruction.
The world will note that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base. We won the race of discovery against the Germans. We have used it in order to shorten the agony of war, in order to save the lives of thousands and thousands of young Americans. We shall continue to use it until we completely destroy Japan's power to make war.
3 days later, a second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, Japan. Americans knew the Japanese government would have to surrender. But as the hours passed, there was a growing sense of anticipation among the American people as there was no word of final surrender. On the evening of August 13th, 1945, news commentator Gabriel Heater told the American people to be patient.
And now, Gabriel Heater.
Good evening, everyone. If you hear nothing by midnight Washington time tonight, you'll hear nothing official until after 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. There's a feeling in Washington Japan's delay indicates a dramatic disagreement inside her own government. And that may delay a final reply for several days. Even civil war in Japan isn't ruled out as a possibility now. Their people know nothing even now regarding their surrender offer. Their latest propaganda line talks of more war and the likelihood of American invasion. And the war is on, very much on. There's no evidence to show that the people are being prepared for surrender. We know tonight they lied when they said they were delayed by the fact that our counter-proposal only arrived in Tokyo early today. Swiss authorities say they had the Jap acknowledgement 24 hours before that. Their news reports reveal several conferences between Togo and the Emperor. So he and other army leaders may be unwilling to go along in any surrender arrangement. The Swiss Foreign Office has made arrangements to remain on duty all night tonight in anticipation of some reply. If it comes, will it be a final reply or another counter-offer? Or will it reveal some dramatic surprise inside Japan? The Emperor's abdication, perhaps, to avoid the personal humiliation of surrender. Will the reply reveal a new government in Japan? A government whose purpose would be more delay. You remember all the changes before Pearl Harbor. China's ambassador seems confident of big news soon. He ought to know how the Jap mind would work under these circumstances. He's a well-informed man. I believe he knows. At least he has every right to know what to expect. He seems confident. There are no facts, however, nothing but mysterious silence. Do they need time in Tokyo to swallow the cruel, arrogant pride? There's little doubt of it. This will be a cup of bitter tea. Picture anybody whose job it may have been to kneel today in the Emperor's presence and say, Holy One, Your Majesty, you'll have to sign a document admitting complete defeat and accepting unconditional surrender. You'll have to do this even when your armies are intact, 4 million strong. You'll have to do all this even before an enemy soldier has landed on your shores. You'll have to agree to place yourself under a supreme allied commander who will be the real ruler of Japan. And after all that, after you've carried out his orders, you'll have to wait for the people of Japan to say whether or not you're to be continued. Even when we're back once more an obscure, disarmed, and dismantled group of islands without pomp or power. When you realize 9 persons in 10 in Japan would hardly dare look up with the Emperor passing by. When you consider how much he represents God to millions. When you realize how completely all of Japan's national life is tied up with this one man, who is now virtually forced to offer himself up to do as we say and carry out our commands, and admit everything he represents in power, natural and supernatural, has failed to save Japan. You'll agree, I'm sure, carrying that news to him was quite a mission.
Commentator Gabriel Heater on August 13th, 1945. The American people were excited. They knew that cause to celebrate was imminent. The war that they had sacrificed so much for on the home front for 45 long months was coming to an end. When Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues, we'll talk about how America felt on that day and how they reacted.
You ever make a change and then think, why didn't I do this years ago? Well, that's how people feel about switching to MediShare for their health care, especially now with inflation the way it is. People are very happy with the savings. Most families save about $500 a month when they switch. It's a huge help when prices are going up so fast in so many other areas. And MediShare's customer satisfaction rate is double that of health insurance. It's just a different experience, and people really like that. Medishare is an alternative to health insurance. It's a community of Christians who share each other's healthcare bills, and it's been going strong for over 25 years. It really is the gold standard, the most trusted name in healthcare sharing. Find out why people love it, find out why they rave about the customer service, and find out how good it feels to save some money right now. They're super easy to talk to. Here's the number, 833-34-BIBLE. That's 833-34-BIBLE, 833-34-BIBLE.
Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, remembering VJ Day, Victory in Japan, August 14th, 1945. After 2 atomic bombs having been dropped on the land of the rising sun, the turmoil inside Japan was evident. Now the American people knew the end was near. Gabriel Heater's comments based on a number of phony or early reports like this one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the news we've all been waiting for, that news has just come to us from Washington. Japan accepts surrender terms of the Allies. So for all of you who are so interested, for all of us from coast to coast, there are just 7 important words from Washington. Japan accepts surrender terms of the Allies. We'll have many more important items concerning that little 7-word sentence to give to you. But we knew that you wanted it immediately, and we've just been told now to temporarily hold up that flash, to disregard it. So, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who may have heard that flash as we brought it to you within seconds of the time that it came upon our United Press tickers, please hold up that flash. Temporarily, we resume the program in progress, but keep tuned to this station for further details every second.
And while many people went to sleep the night of August 13, dreaming of the peace, at 1:50 a.m. on the morning of the 14th, the Mutual Broadcasting System, carrying a remote broadcast of Cab Calloway and his orchestra, appearing at the New Zanzibar in New York City. As the music played, it was interrupted for a special announcement.
From the Mutual Newsroom in New York, Tokyo Radio says acceptance of Potsdam Proclamation coming soon. I repeat, Tokyo Radio says acceptance of Potsdam Proclamation coming soon. One moment, please.
After about 10 seconds of silence and more, just one moment, please, this announcement.
Please, I repeat this bulletin. Tokyo Radio says acceptance of Potsdam Proclamation coming soon. The bulletin from San Francisco. Tokyo Radio said today that an imperial message accepting the Potsdam Proclamation would be forthcoming soon. Repeating that bulletin from San Francisco, Tokyo Radio said today that an imperial message accepting the Potsdam Proclamation would be forthcoming soon. For the news, listen to your Mutual station.
Back to Cab Calloway, but then more bulletins from the newswires, more waiting as more news breaking of this earth-shattering event.
From the Mutual Newsroom in New York, San Francisco, the International News Service, FCC quotes Domai saying Japan accepts allied terms. Repeating this bulletin, dated San Francisco, the Federal Communication Commission quotes Domai saying Japan accepts allied terms. This is not official. I repeat, this is not official. This is from the Tokyo Radio.
Almost 30 seconds of silence and more. Just one moment, please. Just one moment, please. And then the Office of War Information, the OWI, gives them the most hope yet that this could be the end of the war.
We're standing by in the Mutual Newsroom. Just one moment, please. From the OWI, the Japanese government has accepted the Allied surrender formula embodied in the note dispatched to Tokyo by the United States. The Tokyo Doma Agency said today in a wireless dispatch recorded by the Federal Communications Commission. We have another bulletin here. Japan surrenders. Japan surrenders. Now repeating the entire bulletin, the Japanese government has accepted the Allied surrender formula embodied in the note dispatched to Tokyo by the United States. The Tokyo Doma Agency said to recorded by the Federal Communications Commission. This is not official. We're awaiting confirmation from Washington. This is not official. For the news, listen to your mutual station.
Swing bands make him frown. He doesn't get his from boogie-woogie licks.
And while all this was airing at 2 o'clock in the morning, it wouldn't be until early in the evening that all the details became clear. This is what was heard at radio station WKRC in Cincinnati as reporter Robert Trout in London made it official over CBS Radio.
The Japanese have accepted our terms fully. That is the word we have just received from the White House in Washington, and I didn't expect to hear a celebration here.
You've heard it, ladies and gentlemen, and we're here in the Time Star newsroom with a traveling microphone. The war is over. The Japanese have surrendered. The victory has been won. It's official from the White House. You just heard Bob Trout. President Harry Truman has announced the end of the war. The Japanese have accepted our conditioned reply to their surrender offer. They will lay down their arms. There it is, the news you've been waiting for. It's over, all over. For some neighbors of yours and mine, the war ended long ago when the messenger arrived with the telegram saying killed in action or died of wounds. Let's have a thought to that tonight. The sounds of the guns have been stilled. This is August the 14th, the day to remember. The word from Washington that President Truman has announced the acceptance of the Japanese surrender terms. This is the day you wondered about on September 1st, 1939, when the voice of Adolf Hitler swept upon the ears of the world to announce the Nazi attack on Poland. This is the day you wondered about on December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. And then you said, this is it. And whether you'd fancied yourself an isolationist or an internationalist, you knew that that was it. You wondered about your own loved ones back there, December 7th, 41. You wondered whether they would survive it. Well, many of the boys will come marching home, and others will lie beneath the white crosses and stars in far places. Places whose names we'd never heard before that Pearl Harbor day. And so now the war is over. The victory is won. The American people have a new litany of names which have been consecrated by American blood. The blood of boys and men from Cincinnati and Covington, Newport, Lebanon, Ohio, Greenville, Dayton and Connersville, Indiana, and Lawrenceburg. A litany which tells of far places and calls up the vision of beach landings in an inferno of fire and steel. We can hear the whistles in downtown Cincinnati. They're breaking loose because this is it. This is it, friends. Now it's all over in the Pacific, over in Europe. It's over, friends, save for the white crosses and the memory of those place names you'd never heard of before this war started. The job has been done in the Western world and on the land and seas of the Orient, and let's not forget it. We're traveling alongside our newswire now. As a matter of fact, if we can get to the window, maybe we don't have to get there. You can hear the bells and the whistles in downtown Cincinnati. I don't know whether they cut in above the newswire ticking, but Mr. Truman made the announcement that it's over at a press conference. He read a statement which said, I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specified the unconditional surrender of Japan. In the reply, there is no qualification. That's the way President Truman said it. Let me see if I can get to a window. You can hear the bells and the whistles out there. Now Cincinnati can really celebrate. The thing is over and Johnny is going to come marching home. Friends, possibly Columbia Broadcasting System has got something that I haven't got down here on my tickers, so we take you to CBS.
This is Columbia's news headquarters in New York. Our last great enemy is defeated. The Second World War is at an end.
Even the great news commentator H.V. Kaltenborn had an uncharacteristic lilt in his voice.
Good evening, everybody. And tonight I feel like talking like Gertrude Stein. The war is over. The war is over. The war is over. Peace has come. Peace has come. Peace has come. Yes, you can say it with emphasis, for it's ringing in millions of hearts all over the world tonight. That glad, glad news that we've been waiting for years. And here it is. Sometimes it hardly seems for a moment that it can be true. We've become so immersed in war. We have lived the war so completely, so intensely, that this transition from one moment to the next into peace seems almost impossible to realize. And yet, we know it's true. We know that the President of the United States has told us that it was true. And here is what he said. The words deserve repeating again and again. I have received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government in reply to the message forwarded to that government on August 11th. I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan.
Renowned news commentator H.V. Kaltenborn. When Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues, Orson Welles reading Norman Corwin's 14 August, as it was originally broadcast August 14th, 1945. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. We continue in just a few moments.
Veterinary telemedicine is booming. Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Teller, President of the American Veterinary Medical Association, and I know firsthand that telehealth is a valuable tool to help provide our precious pets with the health care they need and deserve. Here are some situations where telemedicine may be an option for you and your pet. If the veterinarian has seen your pet in person in the past. If you're not sure you need to schedule an in-person visit. If your pet had surgery and needs post-operative follow-up. For skin diseases and rash rechecks. When your veterinarian needs to monitor your pet's chronic problems such as diabetes or allergies. If there are behavioral issues or training challenges. Or for hospice care. It's always good to have your session in a quiet place with good lighting. If you're not sure if you should set up a telehealth session, call your veterinarian and they'll let you know. To learn more, check out avma.org/telehealth. avma.org/telehealth.
Many thanks to you for joining us for our remembrance of VJ Day, the day that World War II ended with victory in Japan, August 14th, 1945, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. America fought hard on the home front to support the men and women fighting the war. The end of the war brought one of the biggest celebrations in the U.S. and overseas. Here's Newsweek magazine correspondent Robert Chapman in Okinawa.
The announcement from the White House came after another night of blankness here, following yesterday afternoon's report from Dome, the Jap news agency, that the enemy had agreed to Allied peace terms. Despite the belief that peace was close, many awoke on Okinawa this morning with some suspicion that the Japs were up to a trick of some sort, since the delay had been so long. But now that it is finally and definitely over, a joyful, happy atmosphere exists all over Okinawa. It is a hot, muggy day here, and practically everyone is taking it as easy as possible. Many of us have taken off our shirts and are sitting in the shade talking it all over. It seems too good to be true, almost too hard to realize that we won't have to make any more difficult landings on ever-increasingly difficult beaches. When the news reached here, some planes of the Far East Air Forces were still up in the air. They were mostly fighter planes sweeping against Jap aircraft or against shipping, but not land targets. Although some of these flights were canceled at the last minute, others got through. One of the biggest overall strikes of the war was actually being planned today. 7th Air Force managed to call back its heavy bombers, but some fighter pilots of both the 7th and 6th Air Forces are now aloft and may not be recalled in time. The news here, as announced by President Truman,
that General MacArthur will head occupation forces was welcomely received by Army men. Everyone is now waiting anxiously for the occupation to begin and for the peace to be signed. Although President Truman's announcement did not state so in so many words, it is assumed by most that General MacArthur's new status will also make him the Supreme Allied Commander as outlined in the peace demands. This is Robert Chaplin of Newsweek, returning you to the United States.
And when Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues, Orson Welles reading Norman Corwin's 14 August, as it was originally broadcast August 14th, 1945. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. He was called the Poet Laureate of radio. No one could turn a phrase and make you react like Norman Corwin. This was written with just a few hours' notice, and it was broadcast on CBS August 14th, 1945. Norman Corwin's 14 August, read by who else? Orson Welles.
This day is the father of great anniversaries. Men and saints shall picnic together on 14 August, down more years than you or I shall see. So say it tonight with saluting guns. Say it with roses. Say it with a hand clasp, a drink, a prayer. Say it any way you want, but say it! Say it!
The Columbia Broadcasting System presents 14 August, a message for the Day of Victory by Norman Corwin, spoken by Orson Welles.
Congratulations for being alive and listening on this night. Millions didn't make it. They died before their time, and they are gone and gone. For the fascists got them. They are not here, but their acts are here. And they are to be saluted from the lips and from the heart before the conversation swings around to reconversion. Fire a cannon to their everlasting memory. God and uranium were on our side. The wrath of the atom fell like a commandment, and the very planet quivered with implications. Tokyo Rose was hung over from the news next day, and the emperor prayed to himself for succor. So sound the guns for Achilles, the atom, and the war workers, Newton and Galileo, Curie and Einstein, the Archangel Gabriel, and the community of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Ladies and gentlemen, the peoples have come a long way since we were tadpoles. Much has happened, and the upward path has been strewn with dinosaurs, tigers, Caesars, slave traders, and fascists, in spite of which, as you have heard on the radio tonight, the best in the way of flags is flying over the once mighty lands of the enemy, and free men are being born on schedule. New free men, conceived December last during a counter-offensive against their elders in the Ardennes, are tonight breathing and kicking and making fists, are heirs to victory whereas the saber-toothed tiger is nicely arranged with fish fossils in the museum, and Caesar is twice hacked to pieces by his countrymen, the second time strung up by the heels to cure. The trader in slaves cannot buy back his name from the contempt of the generations, and the Nazi is parted from his pomp and his Führer, pending announcement of the hanging day. The Jap, who never lost a war, has lost a world, learning at what cost to us all that crime does not pay. This too is worth a cheer. Tomorrow will be time enough for humility. Tonight, we count our trophies. The scuttled hulk of the proud Graf Spee, a lie from the mouth of Goebbels, nailed to the ground, a carpet chewed by Hitler, later disinfected in the flames of Berchtesgaden, the Luftwaffe in a British junkyard, hand clasps and bear hugs on the Elbe, footprints and gun tracks going from Berlin to Warsaw to Stalingrad to Warsaw to Berlin in 68 months. Bloodiest round trip in history. Pearl Harbor, repaid 1,000 times. August 14 August to the gun turret and the turret lathe, and both stand still, and their masters stop to wipe away the sweat of winning. 14 August to the tractor in the wheat field, and the farmhand who heard the news from Washington on the local wavelength a few hours back. 14 August to the flag on Suribachi, and to Colin Kelly's boy, and Maya Levin's mother. The bones of the expendables of Corregidor stir imperceptibly on 14 August. 14 August, Chinese time, to the bridge at Mukden where the Japanese crossed over into war some 14 years ago, next month. 14 August, to the blood brothers of Stalingrad, their armies lately a burning wind across the plains of Manchuria. 14 August, to the mending wounds among the hospitals and to the barracks bags and to the bunks and flight decks of the fighting ladies. New homecoming. Now the dog tag exchanged for the name again. They will converge from outlandish zones of time, from secret somewheres known alone to postmasters, from lanes of oceans, and from windy desert camps. The comrades will write letters to each other for a while, and then drop out of touch. The mess halls where the meals were on the house will be forgotten soon enough between Jim's diner and home cooking. Beaches without beachheads. Jobs without sergeants. The men who tilted guns of battleships and stoked them in epic battle will ride the level ferries of bay and river, and tank men will drive a powered lawnmower while their fathers watch. The pilot with many missions will do errands for some civilian company, and the bombardier who crushed a city in a blinding instant will help his wife dry dishes in the kitchen sink. But peace is no dull enterprise this time. It will be armed and vigilant, not languid and flabby. The degenerate years of rigged markets, apples selling on the corner and produce plowed under in the bread line are old ghosts, well laid. What God and laboratory have wrought can serve those who have served. The agitated atom would rather build a city than destroy one, and the jet plane carry passengers to mild appointments. 14 August is 14 August to 500 United Nations, the greatest of which have fought too well together, ever to fall apart. Listeners, on 14 August 1945, size up the latest news bulletins against the morbid yesterdays of Warsaw and Pearl Harbor, fallen Paris, and the Blitz on London. Weigh Potsdam against Munich carefully, removing from the balance the millions who shall walk no more. Sketch in the dates and happenings from textbooks and from memory, and draw your own conclusions. Are we agreed that all is one? That the world's a single continent? That mountains made of faith are not to be moved? That freedom is an endless river, jealous of its tributaries, fertilizing the country through which it flows? Study our time. It will do us good. Effective 15 August. Peace, its care and handling, becomes our homework. Say it tonight, with saluting guns, with champagne, and with laughter. But also remember the fields beyond, and the names and faces beyond. It is worth noting and remembering that here, in this August, the grass is hearty, the sky friendly, the wind in the windsock, birds are competitive, the hills of home are in their accustomed places, and all is accounted for. All is accounted for except the farmer's boy, and the mill hand who live near the canal, and the young men from the city block where the gutters fry in summer. One lies with an ocean across his chest at the bottom of an Arctic deep. Another sleeps with sand in his eyes where he fell on a beach at Palau. The bones of the fishermen rest in clay far from the rocks of Maine, and the miner's kid is under the ground of China. The cricket sings in the summer night, but the soda clerk says nothing. The fawn leaps in the wolf-proof wood, but the jungle roots twine the postman's feet. The turtle is young at 61, but the flyer is dead at 18. Remember them. Oh, when July comes round, and the shimmer of noon excites the locusts, when the pretty girls bounce as they walk in the park, and the moth is in love with the 60-watt bulb, and the tar on the road is blistered. They've given their noons to their country. They've trusted their girls to you. They are face to face with an ally's earth for a bunch of tomorrows. Remember them. Oh, in the fall of the year, when frost airbrushes the withering leaf, and the silo is fat as a bearing woman, and the cleats in the backfield dig up gains to the praise of the stadium, when the number one goose says it's time to go, and the flock points a V to the south. They've given their seed to 48 states, their football tickets to you. The shirt on their back is a worm-cut rag for silks and breads and bomblessness. For kids, unplanned today, who will play ghosts and Tojo every Halloween. Remember them. Oh, in the sleeting months, when the sap stands cold in the veins of the tree, and the bottle of milk on the frozen door stoop raises its cap to the morning, when the skating girls eddy like snow on the rink, and the storm window, hooked on the prairie farmhouse, mutters in the gale out of Idaho. They've spilled their blood for the rights of men, for people the likes of me and you, and they ask that we do not fail them again in the days we are coming to.
You have been listening to 14 August, a message for the day of victory, written, directed, and produced by Norman Corwin, and spoken by Orson Welles. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
August 14th, 1945. What more can be said? There was no better way to celebrate the end of World War II than the words of Norman Corwin and the oratory of Orson Welles. Maybe Welles perhaps accomplished all he desired when he passed in 1985 at the age of 70. Corwin kept writing. He passed in 2011 at the age of 101. And while wars have kept coming, there was none so well fought, none so forcefully prosecuted than the Second World War. Because the war wasn't just fought on the front lines, but on the home front as well. My webpage, classicradio.stream. Your comments welcome there. I'm Wyatt Cox. Thank this station. Support the advertisers. Tell your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.